Okay, here we go, you guys. We are going to be continuing, inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. If you can close the door, Layla, Allah yakramik, that would be helpful. So we talked about purification for prayer, and we said that purification impurity is actually in two kinds. And we said that the impurity, there is an impurity called the major impurity and the minor impurity. And we said the major impurity actually requires that you take a shower from it. So we talked about basically post-sexual relations, and we also said if a woman were to get her period or postpartum, that she would have to take a shower after, of course, that finishing. After her period finishing or postpartum finishing, she would basically take a shower. The simplest shower, hey, stand under the shower and just let the shower basically go all around. All right. The minor impurity simply means wudu. And in other words, in order to get this impurity out, you have to make wudu. So, and we talked about the different impurities, the different minor impurities, or the different things that make an impurity. We said going to the bathroom, urinating, or going to the bathroom, defecating, in other words, pooping, all right? And we also said sleeping. We also said vomiting, with differences of opinions between scholars. We also said going into a coma. We also said something equivalent to go into a coma, such as a person losing their mind or probably being too drunk. That's also meaning that they have to make wudu at because they're not sure. And we also said the part about sleeping. So ablution is usually translated for the word wudu. And we said that the Prophet ﷺ had actually taught the Sahaba on how they need to make wudu. And we said that the person has to have the intention that they're going to be making wudu. They have to, for the part about mentioning the name of Allah, to mean to say Bismillah, that's actually differences of opinions between scholars, whether that is obligatory or not. Okay. The things that you have to do, you're going to wash your face in the easiest way, washing face, hands, head, or head and feet. So those are considered the simplest parts to make wudu in. Face, which actually means from the hairline to the earlobes right there, all that. This is the border of the face, the border of the hands, in where up to the elbows, you're washing the right to the left. If you are washing to the left and then washing the left and then the right, differences of opinions between scholars. As for wiping the head, is it fourth of the head? Is it all the head? Is it one half, etc.? That's a different opinion between scholars on how far or how much we do the head. Now, if a person is wearing a hard hijab to work with, so let's say you've got a hard hijab to work with and she wanted to take her little hijab up to here and she wore the hijab on wudu. Let's say she wore the hijab on wudu and it was hard for her to keep on unpinning it and so forth. If she wore her hijab on wudu, she is allowed to make the easiest way to make like a wudu, and where she's wiping just the little tip of her forehead, or we're talking about the tip of the hairline, and then continue wiping on the rest of the hijab. That is absolutely fine if she wore it on wudu. And if it is hard to unpin and stuff, I know it's not necessarily super hard, but and it's covering all the neck and all the head. So we're not talking about the hijabs that some women might actually take to the back. We're talking about that it's covering all the head. In other words, we're talking about covering the chin as well. Washing both feet until the ankles. When we're talking about washing the feet until the ankles, we're talking about not leaving a single spot. In fact, the Prophet ﷺ, when he saw a man leaving a small spot, he actually said, "Waylun lil aqabi minan nar." He said, "Woe," and wail is a valley in hellfire for those that leave, even if it's a small area left out. In other words, whether that small area was left out purposely or whether that small area was left because of having some kind of a barrier, whether that barrier was pedicure, manicure, whatever it is, in the end, if there is a barrier that is preventing the water from penetrating to the pores, that would actually make that wudu invalid. The whole wudu is invalid in that sense. So you have to make sure that the areas that are to be washed are washing the face, the hands, The head is not to, you don't have to wash it. All you need to do is wipe it. If you wore the hijab on wudu, good for you. You can just wipe on the hijab. It's best if you would wipe it itself like that and you are finished. So washing face, the hairline, right there, this is the borderline, hands, right, left is actually the sunnah. You get extra credit if you did the left and then the right. That's also permissible if you leave a time lapse in where, let's say I'm doing my wudu, I did my face, hands, and then when I was about to do the head, my phone rang. I started talking to my friend for half an hour, and then I'm coming back. Sorry, but you had already dried up by now. So therefore, you need to start over. All right. So you need to start over in that situation. So the other part, we talked about rinsing the different areas. Now we also, I think I didn't do the part about istinja. I think I didn't mention enough about istinja, which is washing the private area. And for washing the private area, the sunnah is to use your left hand. If you wanted to just use toilet paper, that should suffice unless the area is polluted more than that. You can use toilet paper and just end with that. But if the area is more polluted to even more than that, then you definitely would have to use water. Using water, do I have to rinse the area with water or can I just splash with water? You can splash with water. The sunnah is to also, if you needed to use your left hand, you needed to use their hand to cleanse, then use your left hand if you need to. Well, that's why you always need to have short nails, because when you clean your bottom, you want to make sure that no dirt is going in between or underneath your fingernails. I don't understand how people can have long fingernails, because I don't know how they could actually cleanse themselves, but I'll just leave you guys with your imagination. All right. Sorry about that. I just had to say it. I had to get it out of my system. Seriously, I don't know how they cleanse themselves, but okay, whatever. Certain things that are considered sunnah, which actually means it is recommended. You'll get extra reward, extra credit for using it, such as using, here he said the word toothsticks with, it's actually the siwak, but that's actually a good translation, the toothstick, to actually say it this way. And in fact, the Prophet ﷺ actually recommended it to the point that he said if it were not hard on the community or the Muslim ummah, he would have asked them to do siwak and use that toothstick before every salah. Can I use a toothbrush instead? You certainly can. Do I have to use toothpaste? You certainly can. Can I use mouthwash? You certainly can. Can the mouthwash have alcohol? You certainly can. The alcohol in the mouthwash is not the actual haram alcohol. That's a different kind of an alcohol, and not the alcohol that you would actually find in wine. That's a different kind of an alcohol. So you could use that. Combine, you can use Listerine. Combining together, rinsing the mouth and nose and 3 times each, etc. So we're looking at that. That's a sunnah, to combine rinsing the mouth, the nose, and each one 3 times is actually a sunnah. So even if you did it once, that should suffice. Doing it 3 times is actually extra credit. Okay. Starting the left side, that's actually a sunnah and not necessarily not necessarily something that's obligatory. Rubbing the arm or rubbing the feet or rubbing your hands, etc. That's a sunnah and not necessarily obligatory. So if you wanted to rub it in order to make sure that things are clean, that's actually good. Doing it 3 times in certain things, that's actually a sunnah and not necessarily obligatory. So doing it 3 times, the 3-time rule, and the head is only once, but that's actually a sunnah. The proper order is basically as the ayah: face, hands, head, feet. For the face, mouth, nose, as part of what we call part of the face. Doing the dua afterwards. So the word supplication actually means the dua. The dua is that the Prophet ﷺ actually said, none of you makes the ablution, to mean wudu, and completes it and then says, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh, except that the 8 gates of paradise will be open for them. Or Allahumma inni as'aluka, Allahumma ij'alni min at-tawwabin waj'alni min al-mutahhirin. So you would, after making the wudu, you would basically make the dua. Ya Allah, may ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah, and or say, Ya Allah, I ask you to make me from the pure ones and to make me from those that seek purity. All right, so this is right there. Now, the other part, which is performing the two rak'ahs, performing, there is actually a sunnah in where you would pray two rak'ahs in that situation, two rak'ahs just because you had actually done that wudu, that you would actually do that. So in that situation, this is actually a sunnah to do. And even if you don't do it, that's okay too. It's a sunnah. So what does a sunnah mean? You will get extra credit and extra reward for it. Now, the other part, what negates the ablution? In other words, things that before they were to happen, you have to redo your wudu. You would have to redo your wudu if anything comes out of the private part, such as wind, such as urine, or such as, of course, when we're talking about, I don't know why it said fetus. They were supposed to actually say such as feces, not fetus, because fetus, that would actually mean she's getting a baby. Okay, that's supposed to be feces, but right? So right there, if we're talking about whether number one, number two, or even wind, that would mean that you would have to redo your wudu. As for, let's see, some of the things, of course, we talked about the medi and the wadi. We talked about that before, and we said the discharges that actually cause the person, we said they're basically white mucuses that the body gets out, and we said that these body fluids, all right, that they are generally impure, but the body fluid, where it is called al-madhi, that involves lust, that the person would have to do istinja. The word istinja actually means you have to wash your private part and redo your wudu. Il-wadi as well, you would have to redo by basically washing your private part and also redoing your wudu. Il-mani is actually requiring a complete shower that actually involves a different level of, let's say, climax. All right, deep sleep, you are required to redo your wudu if you actually do deep sleep. So what if I was deep sleeping and I heard somebody say that if I was in a deep sleep sitting down in the masjid and sitting on the butt, that's okay. So differences of opinions between scholars on whether by sitting down, and whether that acts as the muscle that prevents the wind from leaving the body. Is that true or not true? Differences of opinions between scholars. Losing consciousness due to intoxication or illness. So if the person went into a coma, all right, then in that situation, they would actually have to redo their wudu. Touching private, we talked about that. Eating camel's meat, we talked about that as well. The prayer, redo your wudu according to the Hanbali madhab, but not all scholars would necessarily say that you have to redo your wudu. So I know I'm wearing the weirdest socks ever because they keep me warm. For eating camel's meat, differences of opinions between scholars on whether you have to redo your wudu. Why camel's meat and not any other meat? So the camel's meat it's not only their meat, but even the camel's barn, you should not be praying in a camel's barn. Why? Allahu alam. All right. For the prayer, so the prayer in general, of course, you have to have that wudu first and washing those areas, like we said. And of course, when we're talking about the prayer, we're talking about making sure that the area, your clothes and your body are all clean. Clean of what? Clean from impurities. And we talked about the impurities in the beginning of our class. Okay, so what are the things that require purity? So if we talk about major and minor impurity, what are the things that I cannot do if I don't have wudu, or if I needed to take a shower and I didn't take a shower? What are the things that I cannot do? Okay, number one is prayer. So you cannot pray if you don't have wudu, or if you are in a major or a minor impurity. Two is that going around the Kaaba during pilgrimage or during Hajj or during Umrah, you cannot go around the Kaaba unless you actually have wudu, or you are clean from major and minor impurities. The other thing is that some of the things that are recommended that you actually have, let me say, wudu for minor impurity, such as mentioning the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, doing dhikr. All right, doing dhikr. So what is the evidence on that? So there is actually a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet ﷺ, when he was actually doing wudu, a man comes by and he didn't say wa alaikum assalam. So then the guy said, then later the Prophet ﷺ responds back and he said that I didn't want to do dhikr. I dislike mentioning the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala while in a state of, while I was actually purifying myself, and he wanted to wait until he would be in a state of purity. Number two is that it is a sunnah to actually do wudu before you go sleeping. So before you sleep. And of course, while in a state of, so this is for people that are married, in where it is actually the sunnah to actually do wudu, even if you were intimate with the husband or the wife, okay? So in that situation, you would have to read its best. Before making ghusl, what is ghusl? Ghusl is a complete shower. So before you make all the shower, you first make wudu. So do your wudu first. What should I start with? Well, wash your private parts first, and then do wudu, and then make the complete shower, and then you could do wudu again. Okay. Number five, it's actually a sunnah to eat after what has been cooked on fire. Well, this actually needs clarification. Not everything that has been cooked on fire. So we're not talking about macaroni and cheese here, all right, or spaghetti. We're not talking about that, but we're actually talking about matters that were cooked on fire in where that involved fatty foods. All right, that involved fatty foods. So the things that involves fatty foods, that's what you want to, that's the sunnah to actually make wudu from, fatty foods. Okay, and which is why when you look at those, the hadith, for example, when where the Prophet ﷺ actually made, and he even made wudu from, basically from, it was meat. So fatty foods, we're talking about barbecue, etc. It's a sunnah, you don't have to. For every prayer, it is a sunnah to actually make wudu for every prayer, even if you have wudu. After every act negating the ablution. So what does that mean? Let's say you lose your wudu because you passed wind. It is obligatory for you to redo your wudu. In fact, to even redo the wudu, you are rewarded for it. Due to vomiting, differences of opinions in regards to due to vomiting. Do I have to redo my wudu if I vomit or not? Differences of opinions. After carrying the deceased, differences of opinions. If the person were to carry the deceased and wash them, or shrouding, differences of opinions. Wiping over the leather socks. It's getting cold right now, so we want things that are making things easier on me. So I'm just going to make this story really simple. Here's this leg right there, or this this foot right there. Okay, so here is the, let's just make it this big so it can be clear. Okay, we're looking at the ankle right there. And this is the ankle, right? Right? No. This is the ankle. Okay. So there we go with, this is the ankle. And then therefore, in order for you, so we're gonna give them a nice, beautiful toe. So we're gonna do this again. We're gonna give them toes. I'm horrible at art, you guys. It's okay. It's too obvious.
I think it was better the way it was.
Yeah. Well, wait a minute, because right now we're gonna give him socks, okay? Because he needs to wear socks in order for him to wipe on it, okay? So let's do it. We're gonna give him some socks, beautiful socks, and yeah, look at these beautiful. Oh. Laughing at my art. You know, trust me, my art is better than Picasso's art. He's making squared and triangle face people. It was haram money. All right, here we go. There we go. So look at these. Now, for the socks, in order for you to actually wear and be able to wipe on the socks, number one is that the socks, they must have been worn on wudu. So wudu has been completed. Number two is that the socks, they have to cover the bone right there. So the cover ankle. They have to have covered the ankle. So cover ankle. All right. Number three is that, so you wear them on wudu. Number three is that you don't want too many holes on them. So you want them to a little bit be thick. Okay. Number four is that you want to make sure that they don't have big holes in them, but they can have a small hole. That's okay. All right. Number four is that if you are, pay attention to this one. You're going to have 5 times of prayers that you can actually wipe on the sock by wiping from here to here. So you're starting from here and you're wiping that way. You're not wiping from the bottom. No, you're wiping from the top. So what do you, sorry, I'm going to raise this. You're actually wiping like this, not like this, even though, yes, it's the bottom that gets dirty, but you're actually wiping like this. All right. You're wiping on the top and not the bottom. 5 times from the first time, counting from the first time you actually lost wudu. So counting from the first time you lost wudu, that's when you're going to consider the 5 times. If you are on a journey, then in that situation, it's 15 prayers, counting from the first time you lost your wudu. Got it? So 15 prayers. We're talking about 15 prayers or 5 prayers. This is a person that's on a journey. This is a person that's home. 5 times, counting from the first time you lost your wudu. Not 5 times how many times you lost your wudu, but if let's say you lost the first time you wore your socks, dhuhr, and then asr, you still didn't lose your wudu. And then maghrib, you still didn't lose your wudu. You lost your wudu in Aysha. Then you're going to start counting from Aysha 5 prayers. Got it? No? Do it again? Do it again. So you're going to start counting from the first time, 5 prayers from the first time you lost your wudu. You wore your socks and you had wudu. Remember, you had to have wudu. You wore your socks, and then after wearing your socks, dhuhr, you didn't lose your wudu. Asr, you didn't lose your wudu. Maghrib, that's when you lost your wudu. Now you're going to start Maghrib, Isha, Fajr, Dhuhr, Asr. The second day Asr is when you're going to have to take off your sock and actually redo your wudu. If you أي حاجة أيوة حاجة تصلي فيهم الصبح والظهر والعصر والمغرب والعشاء. Yep. So 5 times. All right. Now, the other thing is that if you take one sock off, you have to redo it. You have to redo. Now, if you take one sock off, let's say you took the right sock off, that means you've got to redo it. So what if, scenario number 2, what if you wiped over the socks, but when you were about to enter the masjid, you actually decided that you wanted to take off your socks before entering the masjid. You felt they were too stinky. Let's just assume scenario, okay? Differences of opinions between scholars if you take off your sock on whether you could still pray in them or not. Preponderant is by taking those socks off. If you had wiped on them, you could still go and actually pray, okay? So your wudu is still valid, as long as you didn't lose your wudu. So taking off your sock does not mean that you had lost your wudu. Is that clear about the conditions? The conditions for wiping, so generally speaking, they have to be on wudu. You have to wipe the way that we had said. Differences of opinions on whether they have to be leather, on whether they have to be what they call muna'alain, like the Hanafis, and they said that for the Hanafis, they regarded that they at the bottom that they have to have some form of leather at the bottom. So what actually invalidates, and I have to take off the socks, for example. So when we're talking about sexual relations, intimacy, or you removed, for example, what has been wiped from the feet. So what does that mean? So let's say we, things that that basically would make your wudu break are the things that would make your wiping weight break. So let's say you passed wind, you would have to wipe over the socks instead of, you do all the wudu and you wipe over the socks instead of the washing feet. Okay, so only instead of the washing of the feet is what you're actually doing for. You're just making your wudu easier, and especially for and there doesn't have to be a reason. So it doesn't have to be because of cold weather. Even if you're just home and fine, all right, or maybe old age, or maybe because of weight, or maybe because you don't want to slip, or maybe because it's a lot easier for, or maybe you don't want to be, a person that puts their feet in the sink because of hazard of falling or stuff like that. That's absolutely fine. And you use the rule of wiping over the socks. That's absolutely fine. And it doesn't have to be like a dangerous reason for you to wear the socks for. You guys with me here? Doesn't have to be a dangerous reason. For the complete ghusl. So for ghusl, it's simple. Just, go under the shower and wash your body. That should suffice, including your mouth and your nose. That should suffice. If you want to go up a degree and you want to go up a level in how you wash, you could do wudu first and then do the complete shower. When do I have to actually make a shower? You have to make a shower in situations where there is, of course, when we're talking about somebody that has reached the age of puberty, they would know what we're talking about. In reaching the climax and in their lust, in that situation, they would have to redo their ghusl. They would have to take the ghusl, whether that happened in what is called a wet dream, or whether that happened in an actual relationship, or even if the person actually, let's just call it, stimulated the area in by themselves. Then in that situation, they would have to make ghusl. The third one, which is a non-Muslim embracing Islam, there are actually differences of opinions on whether for a non-Muslim embracing Islam, whether they have to take a shower for embracing Islam or not. Majority is, wallahu alam, is that they don't have to take a shower. So if, let's say, somebody does their shahada right now, all right, should we necessarily say, okay, I need you to go back home, take a shower, and come back so I can teach you how to make salah? Differences of opinions. We can ask probably just a fast question, whether they were intimate that day and whether she has a period. That, in other words, those are basically the questions that we would basically tell a Muslim. One, they have to take a shower. So not for the sake of saying the shahada, that doesn't mean that this in itself requires that a person would actually make the ghusl in itself. For the part about menses, in other words, she finished her period, or postpartum, in other words, she basically had the bleeding after a 9-week pregnancy. After a 9-week pregnancy and above, in that situation, the bleeding that stops after it, then she would basically have to take the shower from a 9-week pregnancy, whether the reason was abortion or whether it was miscarriage. She would have to take a shower and actually pray. For the period, how does she know if a period finished? So the period actually has 3 different ways to know that a period is finished. One, the bleeding stops. If the bleeding stops, and in that situation, she would basically look, how do I know if it stopped? Well, there's no more bleeding coming down. In other words, the area is dry. You're wiping the area with a white paper towel or a white napkin, and you could see that the area is dry. Nothing is coming down. But I don't know if I'm going to spot in an hour or two. That's okay. You can wait for a whole day. But remember, you've got a couple prayers to make up if you discover that you were actually not on your cycle during those hours. So what else can I wait for? Well, not getting, okay, what is called the cervical mucus. What is the cervical mucus? Basically that white stuff that comes out, the mucusy stuff that comes out. But guess what? The white stuff that comes out doesn't always come out right away. It actually takes time depending on your time of ovulation. So in that situation, you would actually use the dryness part as the sign to help you know that your period finished. Okay, so this is, if the younger girls don't know what I'm talking about, when you grow a little bit older, you'll know what I'm talking about. That's okay. On Fridays, it is a sunnah to actually do a shower on Fridays. And that was actually a sunnah that the Prophet ﷺ emphasized on. So what are the things that I have to do when I make ghusl? You have to have the intention that, hey, I'm purifying myself right now. Do I have to say the word, hey, I'm purifying myself? No. Just by you going into the shower, you know very well that you're not going in there to study. You're going in there to...
I'm sorry.
That's okay. You know very well that you're going in there in order to take a shower. That's the intention in there. Reaching the entire body with water. So when we're looking at water, reaching the whole entire body, whether we're talking about the mouth, we're talking about the nose, we're talking about the rest of the body, that would actually mean you are making sure that the rest of the body is actually, what about braiding hair, especially for the colored sisters? This could be a big issue in where the braided hair, do I have to unbraid the hair? There are actually differences of opinions between scholars regarding braiding hair and whether you have to unbraid it or not. To make the story short, it is the preponderant that you do not have to unbraid your hair, whether for relations, meaning intimacy, or whether for a period. You don't have to unbraid your hair, and it is enough to let the water go and actually, I guess, seep through the braids. That's totally fine. And another question people ask me, speaking about hair and braiding hair, extensions. This is very often that people ask me about extensions. The part about extensions is that, number one, is that if we're talking about real hair, it's absolutely haram to make extensions using real hair. Why is it haram? Because the Prophet ﷺ actually said, لَعَنَ اللَّهُ النَّامِصَ وَالْمُتَنَمِّصَ الْوَاشِمَ وَالْمُسْتَوْشِمَ and الْفَالِجَ وَالْمُتَفَلِّجَ. So the Prophet ﷺ actually forbid three different types of, I guess, let's just call it beautification, cosmetics, whatever you want to call it. Number one is that changing the body. And he said, al-wasl al-mustawsila, in other words, the women that use hair extensions. And we're talking about real hair. Now, the second one is really a very common practice that was used at the time in where they used to braid their teeth. What does braiding their teeth? So they used to make spaces in between their teeth and they used to think it looked cute. Okay, well, this is a very, yes, I know. Believe it or not, in Japan, this is actually a common culture there, and where they would make their cannon teeth actually be pointy, and they would make spaces in between their teeth and actually think it makes them look cute. In Iran, they would actually put like a sticker over their nose because they think it would make them look rich, that they had actually done some nose surgery, whatever. You know, people can do really, really strange things and think that it's cute. So for the extensions, and in the hadith, for example, the Prophet ﷺ was also speaking about tattooing is actually haram. So what if the person already did a tattoo? In that situation, do they necessarily have to go on tattoo or basically do the surgery or the laser in order to remove the tattoo? If you are able to remove it, then do so. If removing it costs you a lot of money that you cannot afford, or if removing the tattoo is going to cause some damage in your skin, then you don't have to do that. Then just do repentance. For the part about the hair, the part about the hair, if we're talking about real hair extensions, then all scholars agreed that it's actually haram. All scholars agreed that it's haram. If we're talking about synthetic hair extensions, differences of opinions between scholars on synthetic hair, on whether it is falling under extension or not, as based in the hadith. So if we're looking at synthetic hair, which is right now sold, $20, $30, $40, sometimes even more, so it's synthetic. So then in that situation, if we're talking about synthetic hair extensions, or we're probably talking about maybe using some kind of wool or some kind of stuff in order to make the hair seem longer or something like that, in that situation, that's actually synthetic and it's not haram to use. Wallahu a'lam, that this is the preponderant ruling. What about wigs? Wigs, according to the Malikis, are not actually haram to use because you are putting it over your head and not necessarily weaving it as part of your hair. So when we're looking at what about real hair wigs, those are differences of opinions. It's best to stay on the safe side and actually stay. It's not haram because they actually fall within the synthetic part of it. What? Yes. Yeah. Yep. So the thing is that about it is that it basically doesn't allow the water, and you would have to put a lot of, what do they call it, like the gel and stuff in order to make those. Yeah. Yeah. I'm familiar with it. Yep. That's okay. So it's not haram, and you just want to make sure that when you're taking a shower, just letting the water go through it. So that's not haram. All right. So so that's the same thing. All right. So when we're, how did I get there? Why did I get there? At least you guys know, because I know you guys are going to ask those questions. Go ahead, my dear. Mhm. Raise your voice, my dear. You can't raise your voice. Oh, okay. Okay. Got it. Uh-huh. Right. Yep. I'm familiar with it. You like I said, you don't have to remove them. You don't have to remove them. If, let's say, for the person that got the tattoo, do you necessarily have to remove them? You would have to look into the situation. So if removing them doesn't, let me say, cause, because it does actually leave behind marks and skin irritation and pain and all that. So if you're able to remove them, remove them. If you're not, don't worry about it. And it's enough that you had actually become Muslim. You don't have to worry about the past. You like that? That's okay. That's it. Just move on. Yep, that laser can be costly, right? And especially for colored sisters, when we're talking about laser, it can be exactly. So in that situation, like I mentioned, you don't necessarily have to worry about it. You did the shahada, you are Muslim, all the past is wiped, including what you had put on your skin. Okay, so don't worry about it. All right. Oh man, I've got another task right there. I gotta save some money. No. Yep. My dad actually has a tattoo, and they told him it was like gonna be 6 sessions and stuff. And they told him it was gonna be painful too. All right. So what else? Performing ghusl okay, so that one's for performing ghusl for every prayer by the woman who is mustahada. That's actually, imagine if she was going to do that. So she doesn't need to actually perform ghusl for every single istihada. It is enough to actually perform it once. Once it acts as the end of that cycle, and then she would basically just do wudu for every. What is istihada? Let me clarify that one, you guys. What is istihada? All right, who knows what istihada is? Should we clarify that one is? What is istihada? It's not a nosebleed. Hold on. What was that? No, that's not istihada. No, istihada is. No. So let me explain what istihada is. So women's vaginal bleedings are 3 types. There's one that is the postpartum, which is after a woman is pregnant. If she's got 9 weeks and above of pregnancy, and then she lost the baby, she would get bleeding after that. That's called postpartum. That's simple, clear. But the period is basically the bleeding that she would, vaginal bleeding that you would basically get because, the every monthly cycle. Any type of a vaginal bleeding that is not a postpartum and not a period is basically called istihada. So how do we actually act with that? It could be for different reasons. It could be because she's got, let's say, an illness. It could be because she has a cyst. It could be because she did surgery. It could be because she's taking these medications. It could be so many different reasons as why she's getting vaginal bleeding that is not a period and that is not postpartum. So in that situation, with that istihada, what does she do? She doesn't stop prayer. She just makes wudu for every salah. How do I know if it's istihada or a period? A period, my dear, has a smell, a yucky smell too. It actually comes on a certain on a certain time every 21 to 28 days. 3, it is very thick. Even in the toilet, you could see it. It's like thick, like yucky syrup right in there. So that's actually telling you it is blackish, darkish red. That's different. Istihada, on the other hand, is different. In where it is not blackish, darkish red, it could actually be red color, dark red color. That's okay, but it's not blackish red. The easiest way to tell it apart is that istihada has no smell. When you smell it, you can only smell the pad and not the actual bleeding. Istihada can be throughout the year. It can happen when many times. It's not limited to a particular time or a particular number of days. Istihada also is not thick. Once it goes into the water, it just spreads all around into the water. It doesn't go thick and in the toilet. So that makes it easier for you to see. So what do I have to do? What's the difference between a period and istihada? For a period, you don't pray for a period or even fast. But for istihada, you are obligated to pray and fast. But what if I were anemic because of all the bleeding? That's a different reason for you why you don't fast but not pray. But the prayer is still something that you have to do. Performing ghusl after being unconscious. Hold on, let's go. I'm going to move on really quick, you guys. Hey, we're actually on page 66. That's really good. All right. Performing ghusl after burying somebody that is not Muslim. This is a sunnah and not necessarily obligatory. Performing ghusl for 2 Eids. So let's say you're going to Eid. Before going to the Eid, it is actually a sunnah to take a shower before going to the Eid prayer, performing the shower. So ghusl actually means shower. Okay. When washing a person that is dead, you don't have to, but that is a sunnah for you to do. And what else? Let's move on right there. Performing ghusl before entering Mecca. This is also, now there's another thing. What if I didn't have water? Or what if not only I didn't have water, I just didn't know how I can use water because the doctor told me that I can't use water. So we would use tayammum, which is using dry purification. What does that actually mean? The dry purification is in situations where 1, you don't have access to water. 2, you do have access to water, but you are not allowed to use it. 3, you do have access to water, but it is not enough for your survival or your means. These are the 3 situations that you can actually use tayammum. How do I use tayammum, and what can I use to do tayammum? You can use tayammum, or you can use rock, stones, you could use soil, you could use sand, things that are considered of minerals and are not affected by fire. We're not talking about salt. We're talking about minerals that are not affected by fire. So what does it mean that they're not affected by fire? It actually means they were not burned out. So we're talking about rocks, different kinds of rocks, and soil, or we're talking about sand. So in that situation, we can actually use those things if we mentioned don't have access to water. 2, we do have access, but we're not allowed to use it due to illness, probably, or we do have access to it, but it would be too dangerous for me to get it. That situation, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and if you are ill, or you had come from a journey, or some of you maybe are in a situation after defecation, or even in a situation after touching women, and this is a metaphor to actually indicate or refer to intimacy, and you could not find water, then you could use the soil from the earth and actually wipe on your faces and your hands. So what does that mean? Wiping, I would basically, can I get a rock from my backyard and actually use that? Yes, you can get a rock, wipe with that rock. Or if you've got soil, you don't need to get a whole earth. You can just get just a little bit and actually put it. And here we go. You're tapping it on, you're tapping your hands on it, or wiping your hands on the rock, and then wiping your face, and then wiping your palms with it. wiping your palms, just your palms, from back and front, left and right. All right, so this basically acts as the tayammum, simple as that. So nothing hard about it. And the Prophet ﷺ basically explained how this, and this is actually a funny story, is that one Sahabi thought, and he did his own analogy, and he thought, well, if tayammum is in replacement for wudu, then therefore in situations where I have to make ghusl, that would actually mean I would have to dive in the soil, in the sand itself. And sure enough, that's what he did. You know what he did? He literally jumped and put himself, dived into the sand, and literally started flipping himself into the sand. He thought, well, simple, that's in replacement of wudu, then therefore let's go and jump and do a dive in the sand. Well, that you don't need to do that. The Prophet ﷺ explained, and he told him it would suffice for you to actually just do this, wipe your face and wipe your hands. That was enough. You didn't need to jump or dive in any soil or sand. That would have been enough. All right, so let's see. What invalidates it? What invalidates it is the same stuff that invalidates your wudu. So therefore, if you basically get access to water, then in that situation, all you need to do is just do the tayammum, unless you actually get access to water. Differences of opinions between scholars on whether you have to redo the salah that you made tayammum for or not, if you actually had the water. So we talked about the menstruation, and we talked about that and the prayer. Next week, inshallah, we'll be talking about the prayers and going into the details. MashaAllah, you guys did an outstanding job. And we have 10 more minutes left, you guys. Any questions for me? Sorry, you guys. Zamzam promised you would get us some pizza this week again. I guess next time we're not going to be depending on her. That's it. Mm-hmm. You don't have to wear, good question. When you pray, do you have to wear socks or not? Differences of opinions between scholars. Preponderant is that you do not have to wear socks as long as your ankles and the rest of the body are covered. And that is actually the Hanafi madhab as well, that you do not have to wear socks. It's best if you wear socks when you actually have differences of opinions between scholars, but if you don't, your prayer is inshallah valid. Got it?
But it's got to be to the ankle.
Well, I mean, your clothes, the length of it, yes, it has to cover.
I mean, what if I got I'm really tall, so sometimes my dress is not long enough. What if I have leggings that stop at my ankle?
That's okay. Yep, good job. Yep, good job. MashaAllah. How tall are you? 5'11"? MashaAllah, MashaAllah. Anybody 5'11" here? No? Samia? She was gonna be, but something just happened. All right, go ahead, Maryam. Maryam, what do you want to ask, my dear?
I was just what you said you would answer my question later.
What was your question? Wallah, I didn't see it. Wait.
My question was, I have like friend. It was like more related to the class before.
Oh yeah, I remembered your question. Got it. So here's the thing, is that the question, I'm gonna reword it and rephrase it. So the question is, there are certain people that you know they're good people, but you just don't like their attitude. They just have a different attitude, right? There's somebody in your mind, right? A lot of people like that. They're good people. There's something about them. You just don't like their attitude. You just like, oh, no. Okay, here's the thing. Is that number one, is that the Prophet ﷺ actually said, Al-arwahu junudun mujannada. ما تعارف عليها ائتلف وما تناكر منها اختلف. The Prophet ﷺ actually said in a hadith that our souls have actually met before meeting even on this earth. And in fact, we actually have certain things that we, before even meeting in this world, that there are certain things our souls, they actually have in common. So go beyond body color and nationality and all that, but there are certain things that even before our life today, we are actually connected even before our own creation. So you could see somebody for some reason, you just love them. You just love them. You don't know why, but you just love them. And it could be that you know that that person is good, but I just don't like them so much. All right. Now, here's the thing. This is actually part of that hadith, but the thing is that when we actually look at that, the Prophet ﷺ had taught us that أحبب حبيبك هونا ما. When you love somebody, don't overly love them. And when you hate somebody, don't over hate. You know why? Because the person that you hate might be your friend one day. And the person that you love might be your enemy one day. Umar ibn al-Khattab gave an advice that when you love someone, you know what? I'm going to actually open that up. Yesterday, Umar ibn al-Khattab gave this advice that when you love somebody, and that how you relate with the people around you, okay? How you relate with the people around you is extremely important to recognize those boundaries, because you don't want to make those mistakes that many times people would make. What are those mistakes? I want to read this note to you because I didn't memorize it. So I'm going to go over it and I want you to see it. Okay. I'm going to read this note to you. I actually gave it a lecture yesterday, but right now. So Umar ibn al-Khattab, look at this one. He said, don't, in other words, don't speak about things that don't concern you, and keep away from your enemy, and be cautious from your friends unless they were trustworthy. So even your friends, and girls especially, don't share your privacy, not even to your friends. I know as girls, we tend to ventilate, and it kind of feels good to talk about every single thing. A 20-minute, just going to Cup Foods or whatever it is, grabbing something, coming back. The woman can spend 2 hours just talking about a 20-minute event, and sometimes even more. All right. So here, the Prophet Umar ibn al-Khattab was actually telling you, you got to be careful from even your friends. Be cautious unless they are unless they are trustworthy. And even the trustworthy, you got to remember that that trustworthy person is only a person that fears of the Lord Almighty, that considers the boundaries and considers the principles of the Lord Almighty. And don't be friends with a person that is a transgressor, a person that goes beyond the limit of the Lord Almighty, because at the end of the day, their transgression will rub on you. And don't let anybody know your secret. What secret should I not tell anybody about? Don't tell people about your sins. Don't tell people about your family issues and what you like and who you don't like and what they told you and what you don't tell them, etc. Because that's your privacy. And then if you want to consult someone, consult those that actually have khashya. What is khashya? The people that you want to consult must have three things. Number one, they have to have the knowledge. Two, they have to have the understanding of the situation that you're in, the circumstances. Number three, they have to have the experience to know and how to avoid the different things that you might be expecting. And that develops altogether, that develops wisdom. So if your friend doesn't have wisdom, you know what? Find a different friend. And even if you might actually love some things about them, Maryam, you want to make sure that there's a difference between different types of meals. A cupcake cannot act in replacement of real nutritious food. And that's the same thing. Some of your friends, those are just like the salt, just a little bit. You put too much of them, you hang too much with them, your life is going to be salty. Other people, yeah, they're sweet, but keep in mind, sweet things are the least things you want to consume. And some people are too buttery, too full. These people, they might contain hikmah, they might contain some of that, but you also want to balance. Learn how to balance the people around you, just like you learn how to balance your food. You don't want too much of funny people. It will spoil your life. Not too much of funny people. And even serious people, yeah, they're good. They act as the big chunk of your life. But you want to make sure that you also get a little bit here and there. Those that balance their lifestyle, those that balance in who they put within their life and who they deal with are the people that were granted wisdom. The people that were granted wisdom are the people that recognize how much they balance in terms of even people's relationship. All right, so I hope I answered your question, Maryam. Any other question? Nobody. That's it. We'll see you all next week, inshallah. You guys really did a good job. I know it was a long day. And Allah yahmiku ya Rabbi. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give you all good health and give you, inshallah ya Rabbi, good wealth and give you long life and give you, inshallah, a spiritual connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that will always last and be strong. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.